Ladies and gentlemen, dear participants, welcome to today's webinar about regenerative sustainability. What's next? What can we do? So before we'll start, just a quick heads up about the agenda. I'll start with a brief introduction after this welcome about our project. After that, Ms. Anne Furphy will also welcome you as the lead partner of our project, TOURBO. And after that, we'll have the main act from Dr. Elena Fischer from the WFB, the Bremen Economic Development, from paper to practice. After that, there will be a good old Q&A session. Okay, let's begin. I hope everybody can see my presentation and hear me. There will be small stops in between where we'll let in people coming a bit later into this presentation. Let's begin. For you, I have a quick snapshot of our project. My name is Reddeck, and I'm the staff unit for digitalization, the Erlebnis Bremerhaven, or in English, the Experience Bremerhaven Ltd. So, what is TOURBO? TOURBO is an interregional cooperative project for improving MSME competitiveness policies approved in the first call of INTERREG Europe program 2023 to 2030. We have 8 partner countries. We will have the project from March 2023 until May of 2027. Just a quick list of our partners. Our main partners are in Spain, Finland, Bulgaria, Italy, Greece, Germany, Croatia, and Ireland. Our goals. TOURBO offers an innovative approach to a crucial priority for the EU, enabling public authorities and MSMEs, just a quick reminder, those are micro, small, and medium enterprises, to develop twin transition, which is sustainability and digitalization strategies, to stimulate economic development of the regions. The twin transition will strengthen sustainability through technology and enable a sustainable digital transformation for European tourism MSMEs. Through analyze and exchange how interregional collaboration helps to foster the regional transition pathway, develop innovative, smart, green methods in tourism-related MSMEs, build the capacity of tourism-related MSMEs to become more resource efficient, and build the capacity of all relevant public authorities on how to incorporate twin transition strategies. But we have a few challenges. The Smart Europe vision requires to build robust and smart regional ecosystems to support and consolidate MSMEs' capacities for digital and sustainable transformation. Only 17% of European SMEs have achieved a digital transformation. Access to finance for SMEs is low, especially in these times. Many MSMEs struggle with the transition to more sustainable business models. It's not easy. TOURBO addresses two as of yet unanswered questions about transition in local and regional policy. Oh, excuse me, I have to let in. Right, I'll continue. The lack of guidance for a twin transition in local and regional policies via awareness raising of policymakers and of tourism-related MSMEs on skills needed for the transition, changes and chances from the new tourism demands, the benefit of Industry 4.0 twin transition for MSMEs, and exchange on valuable initiatives and supporting schemes for digital and sustainable MSMEs. Focus. All right, we have 3 topics. Topic 1 is the contribution of the 4 Helix collaboration, fostering innovation and competitiveness in the sector with a focus, again, on twin transition. Topic 2 of innovative smart green methods in tourism-related MSMEs. And topic 3, how can tourism-related MSMEs become more resource efficient? our actions. How will we go on about this? Identification of good practices, exchange of experience, peer review, pilot actions, reinforce regional ecosystems, and policy transfers. Again, letting in more participants. Right, our peers, public institutions, they will be enabled to raise awareness among MSMEs on the need for sustainable business practices and to support vital economic ecosystems in applying green policies by enabling digitized services and sustainable business practices. MSMEs will improve their knowledge of customers' preferences in terms of digitalization and sustainability of offers and services. Governments and businesses will explore how they can link digital and environmental factors to significantly boost their economies by a quadruple helix approach. All right, this was a quick overview of our project. There is also our address and a QR code if you want to know more about our project. And thank you for your attention. And now I would go to the next point of our agenda and give the word to Furphy, our lead partner from Spain.
Thank you, Taurean, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to our TOURBO project capacity building webinar. My name is Furphy, for those who don't know me, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Chamber of Commerce of Seville. We are very pleased to have you with us today. And as you may know, we had a prior webinar on the digitalization organized by the Lapland University of Applied Sciences last month. And now we are holding this webinar on sustainability. These capacity building webinars, they are designed to provide more deeper insights into sustainable and digital models for the tourism sector, helping us as policy owners or our stakeholders to improve and strengthen our skills and adapt them to this so much innovative and responsive industry as tourism is. So thank you for your participation today and for being part of our community and to belong to TOURBO. I don't want to take so much time, so I would like to give the floor to our speaker, Mrs. Fischer, who will lead you through today's session, and we'll be back for the question and answer session at the end. Thank you again.
Yeah, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for inviting me and for giving me the opportunity to share some insights on the topic of sustainability in tourism as part of this project. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Yes, so my name is Elena Fischer. I work as a sustainability manager at Bremen Tourism, which is a DMO also in the federal state of Bremen, together with Erlebnis Bremerhaven. I also specialize in sustainability and tourism research and consulting for tourism destinations. And I'm really happy to give you a small insight into best practices and ways and methods of how we can translate all the ideas from the twin transition to practice and what we can actually do on the ground based on overarching policies, and also how we can implement this smart and green approach. So I think it is safe to say that climate change and sustainability are the topical issue of our decade. We have really seen increases in temperature anomalies. We have monthly heat record increase 8-fold since the beginning of documentation. If we look at tipping points, if we look at irreversible points of melting glaciers, rainforest, etc., I think it's safe to say that there's definitely the topical issue that we have to address. And tourism plays a very specific role in this situation, because tourism is not only a massive contributor to climate change, but also a heavy sufferer from climate change. And that is mainly because tourism is dependent on intact ecosystem, tourism is dependent on sociocultural exchange, and also on global business activity. So I think we as tourism professionals should have a particular interest in safeguarding our destinations, in revitalizing them, and in keeping them in a good and vital state for us to do tourism or to do business in these destinations. If we look at climate change and at the consequences of climate change, I think whether you're an SME, DMO, or working in the local administration, there's definitely one point you can see where climate change particularly will affect your tourism product and the way we do tourism. This can either be because of the types of activity that are possible in the destination, because we have changes in temperature, we have different rainfall or precipitation patterns, water quality might suffer from consequences of climate change. This could be because of changing water levels or water quality in water bodies, because of jellyfish, of algae, also of different tide patterns, or because we see a rise in sea level, which will inevitably lead to coastal erosion. This will also, climate change will also have an impact on biodiversity. So maybe we will see different times of bloom of certain seasonal patterns that might attract tourists. So definitely the type of activity will be heavily influenced by the consequences we can see from climate change. As you can see on the picture, this is a ski slope in Austria, which is obviously prepared with artificial snow, and you can see the entire infrastructure of this very tourism destination is dependent on ski tourism, on winter tourism. So this is just one example to exemplify this. Obviously, the length and the quality of the season will also shift. We can already see that, especially in the south of Europe, we can see an increase in tourism arrival and overnight stays in spring and fall because the summer season is just too hot. And especially for countries on the coasts or in the north of Europe, we will also see a shift in patterns of when tourists will come to visit, and also the quality of the season. This not only goes for ski tourism, this only goes for any other type of outdoor activities, but also for cultural tourism, because you might be familiar with the sensation. It is not fun to do sightseeing at 40 degrees if you're downtown or in Old Town. So we will definitely have to keep this issue in mind. I also would like to address the topic of cost, because we are inevitably going to need to invest, especially if we are on a SME scale, like hotels or leisure facilities. We will have to invest into water supply if there is, for example, a garden or an outdoor space attached to our tourism SME. We will need to invest in heating and cooling systems, preferably, obviously, in cooling systems that use natural airflow rather than installing AC all over our premises. Snowmaking, I touched on the topic before, would be another example, which is highly energy intensive and also very costly. And just the upkeep of touristic infrastructure. We can see due to forest fires, due to coastal erosion, due to storms and floods, that touristic infrastructure is directly impacted by the consequences of climate change. And obviously, that will have to be, that also is a point that we have to keep in mind when we're planning tourism for 2030 and the years to come. Tourism has a very particular way of finding destinations in which it can take place, and that is because people always like to spend their vacation by the ocean, at lakes and wetlands, in forests and mountain landscapes. So usually tourism destinations, unless they're cities obviously, are or often sensitive ecosystems, and especially these types of ecosystems are highly endangered by climate change because as the term says, they're very sensitive to changes in the socio-ecological system that they represent, to shocks and stressors coming from the outside, to different hazards turning into vulnerabilities, because they are just more exposed than other ecosystems. So especially when it comes to sun and beach tourism, to outdoor tourism, to mountain tourism, we can definitely see a higher vulnerability of these destinations in comparison to others. And obviously, customer expectation will also change. If we keep continuing to market green meadows or vineyards or golden and sandy beaches, and then tourists arrive and what they find is not the golden sandy beach, but because of coastal erosion, the beach has minimized in size, or if we have that problem, for example, in the Harz region in Germany, which is a very famous mountain region, which is also attracts a lot of tourists for outdoor tourism, for hiking and mountain biking, etc. But because of climate change-induced changes, we have a different look and feel of the landscape, the way the trees are composed, and this will definitely also have an influence on marketing and customer communication. So I'm sure you're all familiar with the Paris Agreement. In 2015, 10 years ago, on the UN Climate Conference, the global agreement was to keep global warming below 2 degrees compared to pre-industrial levels. I'm sure you all followed the news. COP30 took place 2 weeks ago in Belém in Brazil, where this agreement was again softened. And what I would like to focus my keynote on is the Glasgow Declaration, which is yet another declaration that was agreed upon in a COP, in a global, in an international climate change conference, and that is the one that took place in 2021 in Glasgow. And what they did there was they came up with the so-called Glasgow Declaration for Climate Action in Tourism. And this Glasgow Declaration has 5 pathways. They are called Measure, Decarbonize, Regenerate, Collaborate, and Finance. And today I would like to just give you a brief introduction of what we can do as tourism professionals, as SMEs in these 5 pathways in order to accelerate the twin transition. And I will also give you some best practice examples for each of the pathways. So if we take a closer look at the Glasgow Declaration, obviously we have the first pathway, which is Measure. So this pathway very much focuses on how we can measure greenhouse gas emissions in tourism, what type of different calculation standards there are, and what offsetting and carbon compensation can play as a role in our endeavor to reduce carbon emissions. Then we have pathway 2, which is very much about reducing carbon emissions. So it's not so much about avoiding them in the first place, but reducing carbon emissions in transportation and infrastructure, accommodations, activity, food, waste. I will touch on these topics. Then we have pathway 3, which is called Regenerate and really addresses the issue of resilience, risk, and vulnerability of tourism destinations. I just touched on this in the introduction, and also very much on the topic of climate change adaptation. I will give you some examples for this. Then we have pathway 4, Collaborate. Climate change is a very big challenge that lies in front of us. So we have to work together in order to tackle this challenge. So I will show you some multinational stakeholder initiatives and also some ideas of how we can advance the topic in our destination management and also with one of our most important stakeholders, which are our guests. And then lastly, obviously, someone has to pay for all the ideas and measures I'm proposing. So I will touch on the topic of finance, how we can support climate action financially. All right, let's dive right into it. I am going to start with the first pathway of the declaration, which is Measure. I'm sure you're all familiar. There are many different emission calculation standards in tourism. In 2023, UNWTO, or what is now called UN Tourism, has published an overview of methodologies and tools of how we can measure GHG emissions in tourism. in this document, you will find emission calculation methodologies for air transport, ground transport, for accommodation, for tour operators, for destinations. And because there are so many different methodologies out there, some are more company-based, others are more product-based. If we look at destinations, we have bottom-up and top-down assessment methodologies. So because of this plethora of methodologies, I always like to refer to this publication by the UN Tourism. And I'm sure you're also all aware of the Count Emissions EU initiatives, which has the goal to come up with a single methodology for calculating GHG emissions for global transport services. This is based on an ISO standard, and the idea is that all modes of transportation in Europe, freight as well as passenger transportation, use the same calculation method. This calculation method is based on the GHG protocol, which I think is a familiar term. So the GHG, the Greenhouse Gas Protocol, is a private transnational standard for accounting and reporting GHG emissions in companies. And I think this is a good starting point in order to have a single methodologies for all EU states. And actually 2.5 weeks ago, on November 7th, the European Parliament and Council reached a preliminary agreement on a single EU methodology for calculating GHG emissions in transport services. So far, it is not mandatory yet, but I think this was still a milestone in the pathway measurement, because now we have a single methodology for calculating GHG, at least in transport services. There are, like I said, many other different ways of how we can calculate GHG emissions. For example, for hotels, HCMI is a very common methodology for measuring. So yeah, that's just a quick overview of what we can do in terms of measure. I would then skip to pathway 2, which is decarbonize, and just give you some ideas of what we can do to reduce carbon emissions in tourism. And I will go through the different segments of the tourism value chain, which I'm sure every one of you has a particular involvement with either one of these touch points of the customer journey within the tourism value chain. So let's start with air travel. Obviously, the most difficult sector of the tourism value chain to decarbonize. I think we can all agree that compensation can only be a temporary solution. Some tourism destinations in Europe are already working with airlines or with airports in order to help to compensate flights to their destinations, especially if we have remote island destinations or remote destinations that rely on regional airports. As you might know, airlines are obliged by the EU to add a growing proportion of sustainable aviation fuel, of SAF, to their fuel mix. However, SAF can only be produced in very small quantities at the moment, and the same goes for hydrogen. There are some research projects and some innovation projects for regional aviation, but I think hydrogen and SAF cannot be the final solution for sustainable aviation. So this is what we find ourselves in, and as you might have followed, there are very intense discussions at EU level of what we can do in order to decarbonize aviation. What you can do in a tourism destination that is more within your operational control and more within your reach is obviously incentivizing guests to participate in climate-friendly arrival and departure options. This could be by either offering incentives or vouchers or gifts or something to incentivize people to arrive by train or have a good infrastructure for electric mobility, like electric cars. On site, obviously, electric vehicles, bike rental, car sharing, all could be options that you can facilitate for visitors in your tourism destinations. The promotion of public transportation, and obviously at the core is charging infrastructure. I've brought an example from Salzburg. Salzburg Tourism introduced a mobility card this year. It was a pilot project, and this allows visitors to use public transportation for free. It was during the month of May until October. And yeah, this is just a screenshot from the EU platform. So it also sparked a lot of publicity, this project. And I think they were among the first in Europe to try out this new way of incentivizing guests to use mobility tickets, because they were just included in the accommodation they had paid for anyway. Speaking about mobility, this is very closely connected to climate-friendly activities. So for example, what we do in our tourism destination is that we really put a focus on promoting climate-friendly activities in our destination. We have obviously a mix of communication methods, but one would be our landing page, where we specifically advertise climate-friendly activities in our destination, like walking tours, hiking, biking, canoeing, paddling, bike tours, so everything that has to do with low impact mobility. What we also specifically incentivize is local sourcing, visiting local farmers markets, going to restaurants that offer local produce or local dishes. So we put a very big focus on the topic of decarbonization in activities in our communication. Here you can see our Instagram account from Visit Bremen, which is the official tourism organization, and we really try to put this in our stories and our story highlights. We work very closely with influencers and also with our own organic content on vegan and vegetarian restaurants, on how to plan your sustainable visit to Bremen, on how you can arrive climate friendly to the destination. So that is very at the core of our communication strategy. And I think this is something you could do in any organization, an SME, in a destination. So yeah, I wanted to show this very quickly. So let's keep talking about pathway to decarbonization, and let's look at the accommodation sector. So like I said before, because of the consequences of climate change, we will definitely need to rethink our heating and cooling systems and build infrastructure. This obviously goes hand in hand with efficient resource use. And when it comes to this topic, it might also be an idea to think about how we can communicate operational measures to guests. So this could be at the reception, at the breakfast buffet, in their bathrooms. We can use different ways of incentivizing sustainable behavior for guests, for example, by using nudging or rewards. For certain types of behavior, this could be if you arrive by public transportation, you get 10% on your overnight stay, or if you order a vegetarian dish, you get a drink for free or something. So ideas of what we can do to incentivize sustainable behavior with guests. Obviously, local sourcing not only has a big impact for climate protection, but also for our local economy. So we always have different network events for our tourism stakeholders where we connect them with local producers, with local farmers or merchants to help them not buy everything in bulk from one company, but to really have connections with local suppliers and then also build storytelling around it. So if you have a very nice cooperation with a local farmer, with a local manufacturer, or this could also go for handicrafts. You can really tell a story about it, on how you source this particular product, why it is particular to the region, and also highlight the benefits of buying this product or consuming this product. And then obviously in the accommodation sector, we cannot forget about sustainability certification. I think this is the most widely accepted management tool for having a proper sustainability management in your organization. And yeah, I know especially in the European market, sustainability certification plays a big role in accommodation. Let's jump from accommodation to food. I brought some best practice examples, also some that we use here in Bremen. So obviously I touched on this. Local, seasonal and organic sourcing can be the base for decarbonizing in the sector of food, offering vegan and vegetarian options. If you want to dive closer into this topic, I can highly recommend the EU-UN roadmap, which will show you 4 steps on how tourism stakeholders can take action to reduce food waste. What we do in Bremen, we have some hotels that are very innovative on this topic. Some of them use a system called Vino. This very well fits the topic of twin transition because it combines AI and sustainability. It is an AI scale where you can put your food waste. Sorry, is there a question?
No question. There was a short disconnect. Never mind.
Oh, sorry. Well, I hope I'm back on the line now. Yeah, so it's an AI-powered scale in which you can add your food waste, and it will show you the type of food waste and the amount of food waste, and then give you recommendations of what you can do better next time in order to avoid food waste. We have some hotels that have already implemented this system. And another system as a best practice I would like to show is the system Klimato. It gives you a climate footprint for each individual dish on your menu. And then you're not telling customers what to pick or what to eat and what not to eat. It will just give you the facts that one dish might have a CO2 footprint of 4.2 kilos per serving or of 0.2 kilograms of CO2 equivalents per serving. So we already have some hotels that have implemented this. All right, let's skip to the next pathway, which is regenerate. So the pathway of regenerate in the Glasgow Declaration very much looks at the topic of climate adaptation. Sometimes I see there's a confusion between climate mitigation and climate adaptation, so I put this little infographic here. So with the topic of climate adaptation, we're not treating the causes. We're not trying to reduce GHG emissions like we did in Pathway 2, decarbonize. It is much more about focusing on the effects of climate change. So how we can build resilience, how we can adjust our societies and economies to cope with the impacts of climate change, which are inevitable. And sooner or later in our tourism destinations, we will have to deal with this topic. So it is more about preparing for and adjusting to the changes as opposed to preventing the problem from worsening. So as a tourism SME, some tourism destinations might already feel the pressure from climate change induced risks. This could be because of storm surges or cyclones. This could be because of heavy rainfalls and floods, heat waves and droughts, forest fires, coastal erosion, loss of biodiversity. I already touched on this. In Bremen, sometimes I have the feeling when I talk to tourism stakeholders, they're not so much aware of climate change induced risk, or they feel like they're not so exposed to the issue at the moment, or they're not so vulnerable. But even if we look at a map for Bremen and Bremerhaven, you can see that this is a projection of flood levels in 2050 with an increase of up to 4 meters. And you can see everything that is dark red will be beneath the water level. So I think even in Bremen and Bremerhaven, we are very exposed because we're rightly located at the Northern Sea, and this will definitely also be a topic in the future for our tourism stakeholders. So the idea in this pathway is to increase the resilience of the tourism system and to strengthen our ability to take action. So resilience is much more about the ability to take action and increase our coping capacities and adaptive capacities. This could be early warning systems, this could be science, this could be protection strategies and plans, but this could also be adaptive capacities like coming up with an emergency response fund, protecting our business, our hotel, our leisure facility, our cruise operator from the impacts of climate change and taking action before the crisis has hit, because we all know sooner or later we will be faced with crises in our tourism destination. So I will give you some resources and some examples. The city of Valencia, for example, has done an excellent job. They did a study to assess the risks and vulnerabilities of tourism to climate change in Valencia. yeah, if you want to check out this resource. We also have some very good examples from Germany. The federal state of Lower Saxony, for example, has started with a very big project on climate change adaptation in tourism destinations in Germany. They have developed guidelines, tools, a platform for different ideas, where they give you a concrete checklist of what you can do as a tourism destination if you're facing problems with heat, with extreme storms, or precipitation events. They give you examples of where you can find funding in order to adapt your hotel to climate change, of what you can do in order to boost biodiversity. So this is a very helpful and good tool. I can highly recommend this. And then also the federal state of Brandenburg in Germany has also started an initiative when it comes to the topic of climate change adaptation with their local university. So they are also very intensely working on this. I could name some other destinations in Germany, but I think this is a European topic we all have to work on sooner or later. All right, we're close to the finish line, so let's look at pathway 4, collaborate, because like I said, we cannot do this alone. Climate change and sustainability, it is such an important and big topic, but it is also a very incremental challenge. So we will have to find qualified partners that we can team up with, that we can initiate projects or activities, and also share our skills, our worries, and maybe also our funding. So I can highly recommend that you check out multinational, national, or regional stakeholder initiatives in your region, and team up with allies on the topic of climate change. Multinational initiatives, for example, would be obviously the Glasgow Declaration, which you can sign. And there's Tourism Declares Climate Emergency, Future of Tourism, The Long Run. Maybe you might know some of these initiatives. In Germany, for example, we have 2 initiatives called Futures, which is the Association for Sustainable Travel Germany, that also has members from the EU, like Visit Finland or Visit Ireland. They're also part of Futures or Tour España. And there's also the so-called Excellence Initiative for Sustainable Destinations, where destinations from Germany team up and they initiate projects, activities. They try to get funding for projects they do as a group, and they also exchange skills and tools in order to boost sustainability in their destinations. So, like I said, try to find like-minded partners in your destination, team up with them. And lastly, I would like to talk about the topic of sustainability communication with guests, because after all, guests are also your stakeholders. And if you're going to invest a lot of time and money and effort to boost your sustainability in your business, in your SME, make sure to always address the topic with guests. So I will give you some examples of destinations that have done a really good job with this. One would be a guideline for climate protection strategies from Switzerland. Then we have the projects I talked about from Lower Saxony, or from the destination of Leipzig in Germany. And if we look at collaboration with guests, I always try to incentivize the people I talk to think about 3 central questions, which are: how can I communicate, where can I communicate, and what can I communicate? So speaking about what can you communicate to your guests, you can communicate your certifications or labels, you can communicate what you have done in terms of internal sustainability measures for your team, or for your building infrastructure, for your garden, for your mobility service. You can communicate certain aspects of your products, like this is an eco-friendly soap, or we use eco-friendly detergent, or we only wash our towels every 2nd day, etc. So this could be what can I communicate. Where can I communicate? I always say basically anywhere. You can communicate about your sustainability in the B2B segment. So in your email communication, in your newsletter, on your website, on your booking portals that you're using, for example, if you're an accommodation business. When we talk about the guests, I always recommend to look at the customer journey. So where do the guests get their inspiration from? Where do they book their stay with you? You can communicate at the reception, at the breakfast buffet, in the room, when the guests leave and you send them their follow-up or feedback or reward. So basically look at the customer journey and then see where the customer has a touch point with any type of sustainability initiative you initiated, and then always say you can communicate there. And then lastly, how can I communicate? I know talking about sustainability, talking about climate change can be a touchy topic, especially if guests are on vacation. They might not want to be lectured about how they should behave or what they should do. So I always try to recommend to communicate by using storytelling, by integrating your sustainability messages in a bigger concept or in a bigger storyline that you're communicating to guests. It's always also helpful to communicate in a friendly and open and engaging way with your customers. I've put some examples here. I know this might not be for every type of SME or for every type of accommodation. It has to fit your overall company DNA. But instead of saying, please only eat as much as you can, it's very much nicer to say, enjoy our locally produced buffet in smaller portions, come back for more instead, and then also link it to what this behavior of the customer would do in terms of preventing food waste. So this, for example, would be an example from Sweden, I believe. All right, and lastly, let's talk about another very important pathway, which is finance. I have brought two examples of how we can support climate action financially. One would be public funding and the other one would be organizational initiatives. Let's start with public funding. Obviously, EU projects would form part of public funding, like TOURBO project or like the Inspirus project. Erlebnis Bremerhaven is currently also involved in, so you can find public funding on EU level, but also on national level. For example, in Germany, we have funding by our Ministry for Economics that specifically funds sustainability projects in tourism, and they issue a call each year, and then you can hand in your projects for sustainable tourism funding. So this would definitely be one option. Then I would also like to highlight a second option, which is organizational initiatives. I have brought an example from an organizational initiative from Switzerland. Maybe you know the destination Davos in Switzerland. So what they did is they have come up with a climate, or it's a system where local businesses can dedicate a share of their profit to the funds, and then guests can pay a voluntary financial contribution, and this will contribute to the so-called Davos Climate Fund. So this fund supports projects that reduce CO2 emissions and at the same time strengthens local suppliers and businesses for projects like concerning local resources, offering guests and customers a high quality experience or products. So it is a very good way if the guest invests 1 Swiss franc and then the company or the SME doubles this 1 franc and makes it 2 francs. And then this contribution is dedicated to 50% offsetting projects, 15% sustainability measures on site, and then 35% for sustainability measures in your business. So this would be an idea of how we can finance sustainable action in tourism. Another example, I'm sure everyone has heard of it, would be from wonderful Copenhagen, from Denmark. It's the project CopenPay. It is a system where the DMO of Copenhagen rewards climate-friendly actions from guests. So the system is very simple. businesses from Copenhagen can sign up to these initiatives and come up with an action a customer or a guest has to do. They come up with a reward that the customer then gets if they do this action, and then you have the benefit for all, for the guest as well as for the company. An example could be if you arrive with sustainable transportation, you get coffee for free. Or if you take part in 20 minutes of a recycling project or in collecting waste, you get 20% off from the entrance to the museum or to the theater, or you get locally brewed beer for free if you order a vegetarian dish. And yeah, this is one example. And what we're actually currently doing in Bremen, we have reached out to Copenhagen and connected our initiatives with theirs, and we're also planning to do something similar in Bremen next year. Another example for an organizational initiatives, which is right at the coastline from Bremerhaven, would be an initiative from the tourism organization North Sea, which is responsible for all the destinations in northern Germany that border the Northern Sea in Lower Saxony. What they did is they came up with an initiative for accommodation businesses. So if you refrain from having your room cleaned each night, the tourism organization or the DMO will invest €2 to climate protection initiatives or projects. So this is something you might be familiar with from accommodation businesses, but I think this is a first, or at least a best practice for a DMO to initiate a system like this for the entire destination. And the feedback on this initiative has been very, very positive. It was very well received, and they could, not only deviate the businesses because they don't have to invest so much in the staff for housekeeping. They have less laundry costs, etc. And it also benefits the DMO. So this would be another example. So that's a wrap. Just a quick walk through the 5 pathways of the Glasgow Declaration. And then to finish things off, I brought a little slide, what's next? And whether you're a tourism business, a hotel, an SME, whether you work in the local administration, I always like to ask people, where do you have operational control? Obviously, we cannot tackle all the problems of sustainability at once or all the problems of climate change, but ask yourself, where do you have operational control? What is actually in your power to change? Where can you change a process? Where can you change a supplier? Where can you change your communication? So really ask yourself, what is it that you can do? Maybe you can also ask yourself, if there is one area of sustainability that particularly interests you, you might be very fond of plants and animals. So you might want to dive into a topic of biodiversity protection before you look at your heating and cooling system. Maybe you are very much into cooking and food, and then you can tackle the whole local sourcing and how we design our menu cards topic first. Or you might be very interested in mobility. You have a passion for cycling, and then you might want to ask yourself, how can we increase the share of arrivals by sustainable mobility, or what we can do as a business. This could be free rental bikes or cooperation with a local bike shop, etc. So maybe start with an area that interests you to help with the motivation. And then, like I said, we cannot do this alone. So always ask yourself, who are potential partners you could team up with? Partners in your destination, other cities, other DMOs, other hotels. What type of associations are there for your specific type of tourism business? There are gastronomy association, hotel associations, DMO associations, nature park associations. I think you get the idea. And then obviously, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. I always recommend to consult good practices. Many people all over Europe have already done amazing work in the realm of tourism and sustainability. So sometimes it doesn't have to be the newest or the most innovative project. If someone had a good idea, you might want to consult that good practice and just see how you can implement that in your operational control. And then lastly, because the year is drawing to a close, we're short of starting 2026. Maybe you might want to set a goal for 2026 of what you want to do next year, what you want to achieve next year, who you want to reach out to, which type of process you would like to change. So I think this time of year is always a good time to take a step back, set a goal for the next year, and then you can do the follow-up in the coming year. All right. Well, thank you very much. I think this was a quick run through many different types of smart green methods for SMEs in the topic of the twin transition. And I always like to give some good practices to inspire people to maybe copy one thing or the other. So thank you very much. And yeah, happy to continue the conversation. Thank you.
Yes, I can only repeat that and say thank you very much, Elena, for your very interesting presentation. Before we start with the Q&A session, I would just go back to a comment we had in the chat. It was made by, I'm trying to pronounce this the right way, Francisco Benitez from the Andalusian Ministry of Tourism. He talked about an Andalusian risk assessment. I would just straight up give you the word. I'm very interested.
Hello?
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Loud.
I'm very glad that I, in the end, attended to this meeting because it has been really great to hear Dr. Elena Fischer. So I represented the government of Andalusia in the tourism sector, in the public authority of the Ministry of Tourism. And one of our main challenges now is how to engage the SMEs in the decarbonization and adaptation process to climate change. So we are signatories of the Glasgow Declaration, and we have a whole legal framework for decarbonization and adaptation, which is a law, and based on the law, an action plan. And within the action plan, we have the risk assessment I mentioned in the chat. So all that work has been already done so far. So our challenge, one of our challenges, we have different challenges now, but one of them is maybe the most important one, is how to engage, how to communicate, and how to support the SMEs in our region. And so there are so many questions that I have in mind, but just to be short, I'd like to know, because one of the challenges is we have legal instrument, voluntary instrument for SMEs to help them to decarbonize for example, we have a public registry for climate actions in businesses, so they can go to that registry and submit a plan and saying it's voluntary, of course. And say, well, we have this plan to decarbonize, to make our business more sustainable, to green our business, and it's free of charge. But the challenge is how to involve, how to draw them to get to that point, and because it's free. I mean, it's not something you just maybe need to devote some time just for the administrative paper that it involves every procedure, but no more than that. So, but at least here in Andalusia, and I guess in most of Europe, tourism, the equation tourism and climate change is quite unknown yet. So we have to start from the very beginning. Any ideas, any suggestions just for beginners to start that process? I'd love to hear Dr. Fischer and others maybe about this. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. Great to see the work Andalusia is doing on this topic. I think what you mentioned is a very important point because we have all the plans and the guidelines and the funding programs, but then we have to translate this to the SMEs, to the local businesses. So what we have found works best is face-to-face communication. So we work a lot with workshops, with individual coaching sessions, with mentoring to really help businesses face-to-face. Because if we just issue a LinkedIn post or a newsletter, the response rate will usually be a little lower. What Lower Saxony has actually done is really address the because most of the tourism businesses here are entrepreneurs, so they look at their balance at the end of the year. So they do webinars that are literally called "How Can I Save Money as a Tourism Business Through Climate Change?" And then they offer all sorts of tips and tricks of what you can do to bring down your energy bills, to have more efficient systems, to put in motion sensors, to cut your energy cost. And this is where we can usually get the tourism business if we talk about how to reduce cost. Or what they also do, they teamed up with an insurance company or with multiple insurance companies, and they really offer step-by-step webinars and guidance of how you can update your insurance policy as a SME in the destination in order, if you're faced with a disaster, how you're insured against that. So we always find that getting them from the economic side of things is the most promising way to do it. Because like I said, if we just speak to them about their vulnerability and their exposure and how they should adapt, it's not, they cannot make sense of it or maybe incorporate it into their daily decisions. So maybe, but I'm happy to hear other people sharing their experiences with this issue.
Thank you, Elena. Thank you for your answer. Maybe we have in our group in TOURBO the examples from Finland, from Lapland and Visit Finland program. They have also succeeded quite well in triggering SMEs into adaptation and mitigation of their activities and decarbonization. So maybe, I don't know if someone from Lapland wants to jump in, maybe, because they know more about their step-by-step programs.
Hi, this is Eija. Can you hear me?
Hello,
well?
Eija. Yes, Eija.
Yes,
Loud and clear,
very
yes.
good. It was very, very interesting, Elena, your speech, and very inspiring also for us, and many similarities what we have done here in Finland. And it is so great to hear this kind of examples that you shared from Switzerland and other parts. And we have also noticed Ireland, who is our partner also in this program, that in Ireland they have good programs for financing the companies, and we are together also involved in the new project that you said. Together with you are heading or Bremerhaven is heading the new program with this cascade funding, funding for the companies inside the project. It is a very good example of how you can have companies getting funding for this kind of, you could say, strategic moves, which are quite difficult to handle on your own. This cascade funding is very good example in that one, that because company gets the funding. Sorry, I have to close the telephone. Company gets the funding and also an expert, another company who can guide the tourism company in the path. Yes, we have this program in Finland that many companies have joined, and also DMOs. It is for DMOs and for the tourism companies, and also micro-sized companies are able to join the program. So it is, I put there a link to this program. It is in English, so you can have a look. But very nice, and I'm so happy to see that in Bremerhaven you seem to be like ahead as an area, as a region, as a town. Thank you.
Okay. Well, Bremen and Bremerhaven, the two cities, one country, as we say, one land, more or less, federal state.
Sorry.
Yes, Bremen is far. No, don't worry, don't worry. Bremen is far ahead. Bremerhaven is also ahead. We're working together on this, and on the EU level too. All right. Are there any further questions? I have myself written down some.
I have a question.
Yes, please.
Yes, yeah, this is Osman from Visit Cologne. Elena, thank you from my side. Of course, thank you very much for your very informative and very inspiring presentation and very highly sympathetic presentation. On slide 21, you referred to preventing or reducing food waste and mentioned 2 good practices on local hotels. I couldn't find them on the slide and wasn't quick enough to take notes. I would appreciate if you could add them to the slides or at least to the email contributing this presentation.
Yeah, thank you for the feedback. I will do so. I can also post the links of the 2 systems in the chat that for easier reference. Thank you.
Thank you.
Just a quick reminder, we already had this question in chat and it was answered there, but just for everybody, again, this session has been recorded and will be made available in an edited format later, as well as the presentation will also be available later on. Yes, please, another question.
It's me again from Andalusia. Elena, I wonder if, because I talking about communication, I wonder if you know any experience of appealing for SMEs to the kind of ethical side dimension of investing in climate issues, in climate friendly products. Setting aside the economic side, the thing of the business, just appealing to that sense of ethical values that this work involves. If you know any experience and if that experience you think is worth knowing and taking into account when we communicate.
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think this has a lot to do with what I mentioned in the beginning, because tourism is dependent on intact ecosystems and on global business activity, on socio-cultural exchange. So you might have an intrinsic motivation to protect your destination, to do something to foster your destination. I think that is easier if we're speaking about islands, coastal regions, small villages, how are they called, like environmental protection areas. And for me, I work in a city and I work with stakeholders in a city. These are usually big companies, big corporations, big hotel chains. So they don't have this sense of place with the destination of Bremen. It's just one of their places they do business in. So I think this ethical idea of I want to protect my destination, I want to protect my surrounding for future destinations and keep this up might work better even in a rural or in a smaller destination, which is more connected to the socio-ecological system they find themselves in. Yeah, I think for now.
Okay, do we have any further questions? Feel free to ask. All right, if nobody is stepping up, I have some questions. I noted for, I think slide 21 it was, how far are the producers away from the stakeholders? So you've mentioned a collaboration between stakeholders and local producers to, how to say, to supplement their ingredients with more local variants of these ingredients? How far are they apart from the final destination of the food? What is your area of, well, producers you're sourcing from?
Well, at the end of the day, we live in the same ecosystem or in the same economy. So what we try to really push for our suppliers is local sourcing. We do these speed datings with tourism SMEs like hotels and restaurants and farmers, and then you have 1 minute to talk to the respective opposite, and then they can offer their eggs or milk or cheese or local jams or honey or whatever it is they produce in this region. And then we try to have contracts between the hotels and these suppliers, obviously. But you have to keep in mind it's a lot of work for the hotels and for the gastronomy. It's easier if you order everything in bulk from one supplier and they come 3 times a week and you get everything one shop solution. But like I said, if you make a story about it and if you incorporate this local sourcing in your product, in the customer experience, this might be an incentive for people to do that. And Bremen, well, I know it's the same for Bremerhaven. They're really much connected with local handicrafts or local manufacturers that have very specific ways of how to prepare local dishes or local items. And they also sell souvenirs. So, for example, everywhere we sell souvenirs, we try to obviously push for regional gifts and handicrafts instead of some magnets or postcards you buy in bulk from overseas.
Yes, I can also repeat that we have a lot of locally sourced souvenirs, or with at least local, well, relatively locally made, the best we can as a small city. Right, I have another question. You showed some very, very good resources on slide 26, though they were presented in German. Are they also available in English or other languages?
Well, I know the study from Valencia is available in Spanish and English. The ones from Germany, I am not so sure. I believe they're only available in German, but I can check and then link the resources in the slides for the documentation that will be sent out.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
Maybe I was just going to say, today and age, maybe with AI, you can
yes,
find
certainly.
a good translation.
There's always a way, but if there's an official resource, it's also great. If we have access to these resources, it should be more than enough. Just another question to slide 30. I really like all of these messages, these small sentences, phrases, this motivation to do good. Is there some kind of study, do you know, of some kind of resource or best practice? Where is the best place to place some kind of message? At the buffet, the room itself? Where's the best, well, placement at the end of the day?
Well, there are tons of studies that have to do with consumer psychology, so it's much more of the niche of psychology, marketing, consumer decision making. I know that one destination in Sweden, which is also linked in the slides, they're called Västmanland, I believe. They did a very good study on nudging and how we can influence consumer choices through messages. I will make sure to link that in the slide. And there's also one company, I cannot think of the name at the moment, that specializes on this specific topic on decision making, sustainable decision making in tourism. And that has a lot of resources and publications and studies on the topic. I will link that in the slides.
All right. Thank you very much. It was overall, as everybody has said, and I can only repeat that, very interesting. And I have just one small last question. On slide 14, you had a beautiful graphic for the ABC of sustainability. And I just took a look at the X, and it said Xeriscape, if I pronounced that right. Do you know what that is? It's a very specific question, I know,
Yes,
but it has been burning at the back of my head.
Well, it's about your surroundings, so your landscaping, your gardening project. So one problem that we always have is that we use too much concrete, and if it rains, there's not enough opportunities for the water to leak through these concrete. So if we have stone gardens, or especially in the south of Europe, you might be familiar with the topic. If it's very hot, we might need to use different types of plants, different types of succulents, have stone gardens, have spaces in our outside areas that are very good for irrigation, for water irrigation. And then we have some tourism activities like golfing, for example, that require massive loads of water, but we can also always actively decide what type of plants we use on a golf course, how do we water the golf course or our outside areas. Same goes for pools, because we have a lot of evaporation from pools in the summer sun in the south of Europe, and yeah, how we can landscape our surroundings. Yeah.
All right.
And
thank you very much. It was, sorry.
The resource I was going to mention is a company called Be Smart. I will put the link in the chat, and they focus, like I said, on empowering travel and hospitality businesses to optimize their guest experience using behavioral science and yeah, studies from psychology and decision making on nudging people to make the right choice. I will also link this in the chat.
Thank you very much. Also for the very specific questions I had. All right. Are there any last questions in the chat in the room?
No, just me jumping in. Thank you so much, Elena, and for the presentation and for spending time and your expertise and your contributions to the session we had today. So we really appreciate your clear explanations and all the inspiring examples that you have provided to us. Thank you so much. And thank you for sharing the presentation and so on with the participants.
Okay.
And to all the participants and to all our stakeholders, thank you again for being here and for joining the session. We hope it was of interest to all of you.
Yes. Thank you very much, Anne, and thank you very much, Elena. And to the participants for participating, have a beautiful Tuesday. And we will work on the information and the recording of this webinar. Have a beautiful day.